Okay, buckle up guys, because we're diving into the ultimate origin story. Forget about superhero beginnings. We're talking about the literal creation of the universe here. In the beginning, no, not your beginning, the beginning. The OG of beginnings, right? It's just God all by himself. No Wi-Fi, no YouTube, nothing but this giant dark void. I'm talking blackout curtains level darkness. And God's like, yeah, this could use some work, and says, let there be light. Boom, light switch flicked. And God sees the light and is like, not bad, not bad. So he's vibing with the light, but now he's like, hold up, this needs balance. So he divides light from darkness, day and night. Because even God knows you can't just have 24/7 daylight. You ever try to sleep with the sun blasting in your face? Nightmare fuel. Next up, day 2, God's like, this void is kinda dry, let's get some H2O action up in here. He splits the waters, creating the sky. Now we've got a nice Earth-sky sandwich situation. Still no clouds though, so good luck predicting the weather. Day 3 rolls in and God's like, okay, let's spice it up with some land. Ocean's cool and all, but we need continents for like future humans to stand on. So he piles up some dirt and boom, mountains, beaches, all that good stuff. Then God's like, all right, let's get some greenery. And suddenly plants everywhere. Trees, grass, vegetables. It's basically the first farm-to-table restaurant. And God looks at this earth salad and goes, nice, I can dig this. Then day 4 happens. God's like, okay, day and night are cool, but we need some bling to keep track of time. So he throws up the sun to rule the day, and the moon and stars for the night shift. Basically, it's God inventing calendars before they were cool. Day 5, things get weird. God's like, you know what? The ocean needs friends. So he starts creating fish, sharks, and probably that one jellyfish that always stings you at the beach. Then he's like, wait, let's not forget the airspace. And boom, birds are born. Eagles, pigeons, flamingos, all doing their thing, living their best lives. And now we're on day 6, the big one. God's like, all right, time for the main event. He whips up animals, lions, cows, snakes, you name it, and they're all roaming around. But then he's like, nah, this party needs a host, and creates humans. And God's like, let's make them in my image. I mean, I'm pretty awesome, so why not? Day 7 rolls in and God's like, time for a nap. And honestly, after creating an entire universe in 6 days, I'd need a break too. So he rests, kicks back, and calls it a wrap. And that, folks, is how the universe was born. No CGI, just pure divine power. So next time you're stuck in traffic or waiting for your pizza delivery, just remember, at least you're not creating an entire planet, right? Alright guys, so God created the universe and everything in it, but now he's got some major after-party moves to pull. We're talking deep dives into human creation. This is the DLC for Genesis chapter 1. So we're starting with God chilling on day 7. He's done creating everything. Sun, moon, stars, animals, humans, it's all Gucci. So God kicks back, throws up his feet and says, I'm taking a day off. You think you've earned a weekend? Bro, this is the original weekend, but hold up because we're about to rewind a bit. Now God's like, okay, let's get specific on this whole human thing. He looks at the ground, grabs some dirt like, yup, this'll do, and forms a human out of literal clay. So we're all just walking, talking dirt clumps, but with style. And then God does something wild. He's like, nah, this dude needs more than just dirt to function. So he breathes life into him. We're talking CPR, but on an epic, divine scale. Boom, first human, Adam, is alive. Just like that, man goes from 0 to 100, real quick. But wait, God's got bigger plans. He's like, okay, I just made this guy. Now he needs somewhere to live. Not gonna leave him out here in the wild, dodging lions and stuff. So God plants this baller garden, the Garden of Eden. And we're talking lush, people, trees, rivers, probably the most Instagram-worthy location ever. Adam just scored the ultimate real estate hookup. Then God says, all right, Adam, you can eat whatever you want in here. Fruits, veggies, you name it, except this one tree, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Don't touch it. Seriously. It's like setting up a PlayStation in your house but telling your kid, don't play this one game. You know what's gonna happen. So now Adam's chilling in Eden, naming all the animals, right? God's bringing out lions, giraffes, chickens. Adam, what are we calling this one? Adam's like, chicken? God's like, cool, next. But then God looks at Adam and goes, this dude looks lonely. Naming animals is fun, but he needs a buddy. So God puts Adam into the deepest sleep ever. We're talking sleep mode times 1,000. And while Adam's out, God's like, all right, I got this, and literally pulls out one of his ribs, just casual surgery. And bam! With that rib, God creates Eve, the first woman. And when Adam wakes up, he's like, whoa, finally someone I can hang out with who doesn't moo or bark. Adam's pretty hyped. He's all like, this is bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh, which is basically biblical for, yo, she's the one. And thus we have the first couple, take that, rom-coms. So Adam and Eve are living their best life in Eden. No clothes, no problems, just chilling. And the Bible even points out that they're not ashamed of being naked. I mean, why would they be? They're in paradise and they don't even have to worry about laundry. Win-win. And that, folks, is Genesis chapter 2. God builds a paradise, creates humans from dirt and ribs, and sets up the first ever relationship. So next time you complain about your apartment, just remember, at least you didn't have to name all the animals or get a rib yanked out to meet your significant other. And now you know where the whole soulmates thing comes from. Stay tuned for the next chapter where, spoiler alert, things go way off the rails in Eden. You won't want to miss it. Alright people, we're back in the Garden of Eden, aka Paradise on Earth, and Adam and Eve are just living their best lives. No worries, no bills, no clothes, everything's great. But guess what? We're about to witness the first ever plot twist in history. Enter the villain of our story, the serpent. This snake slithers up all sly-like and starts chatting up Eve. And we're not talking about some hiss-hiss, fork-tongue nonsense. This serpent is straight up talking like it's auditioning for a reality TV show. He's like, yo Eve, so about that one tree God said you can't touch. Have you ever considered maybe he's holding out on you? Now Eve's intrigued. She's like, wait, what do you mean? And the serpent hits her with, girl, if you eat from that tree, you'll know everything. Like, you'll be just like God. You want that divine upgrade, don't you? Eve starts eyeing that fruit like it's the last slice of pizza at a party. She's thinking, it does look pretty good. What's the worst that could happen, right? So she grabs the fruit, yes, the forbidden fruit, and takes a bite. And just like that, boom! Knowledge bomb. Suddenly Eve's mind is blown. She's like, wait, I'm naked? But does she keep this revelation to herself? Oh no, she goes straight to Adam, hands him the fruit like, hey babe, you gotta try this. And Adam, being the classic okay honey kind of guy, takes a bite too. Now they're both like, whoa, we're naked. And suddenly it's all awkward. They run around grabbing fig leaves like, quick, cover up. It's the most frantic leaf grab in history. Paradise, more like clothing optional, became mandatory real quick. But here's where it gets serious. God shows up in the garden for his daily walk like, all right, time to check on my creation. And Adam and Eve hear him coming and freak out. They dive into the bushes, hoping God won't notice them. But God's like, Adam, Eve, where you at? Adam nervously steps out and says, yeah, we're hiding because we're, naked. And God, like the all-knowing parent he is, just gives them that look. You know the one. He's like, wait a minute. Who told you you were naked? You didn't eat from the tree I told you not to, did you? And Adam does what any classic dude would do in this situation. He throws Eve under the bus. He's like, yeah, it was the woman you gave me. She gave me the fruit. And Eve's like, whoa, it was the serpent. That snake tricked me. God's just standing there like, really? That's the excuse we're going with? All right, fine, let's lay down the consequences. First, God looks at the serpent and says, you're cursed, buddy. From now on, you're crawling on your belly eating dirt. So thanks to this one snake, now every snake has to slither in the dirt forever. The rest of them are probably like, dude, why'd you have to mess this up for all of us? Then he turns to Eve and says, all right, you're going to have some serious trouble with childbirth now. It's gonna hurt, a lot. And oh yeah, you're always gonna want to control your husband, but he's gonna rule over you. Ouch, that's some major drama for the first couple. Finally, God looks at Adam and says, you, my man, are going to work hard. The ground is cursed because of you, and now you're gonna have to farm and sweat for your food. No more free meals in Eden. And then the big finale. God's like, y'all can't stay in the garden anymore. He kicks them out of paradise like a bouncer at an exclusive club and posts an angel with a flaming sword at the entrance. So Adam and Eve leave Eden, fully clothed now, thank God for fig leaves, and head off into the harsh, real world. Welcome to the real world, Adam and Eve. And that, folks, is how everything went from paradise to uh-oh in one bad decision. Moral of the story? Listen when God says don't touch that, because the consequences, well, let's just say they'll stick with you. Okay, people, we're out of the Garden of Eden, and things are about to get messy, real messy. Welcome to Genesis chapter 4, the world's first crime drama. Adam and Eve are out here starting a family, and their two sons, Cain and Abel, are about to make Family Feud look like a walk in the park. First up, we've got Cain, the OG older brother. Cain's a farmer, growing crops like wheat, corn, probably the first avocado toast. Then there's Abel, the younger brother. He's out here raising sheep, probably knitting the first ever wool sweater or something. Now these two decide to bring offerings to God. Cain brings some crops, his farm-to-table setup, and Abel brings the best portions of his sheep. We're talking premium lamb chops, filet mignon of the flock, fancy stuff. Abel's basically Gordon Ramsaying this sacrifice. Cue the sibling drama. Cain sees Abel getting all this love from God and feels like he just got bumped from first class to coach. He's not just jealous, he's furious. Cain's out there like, seriously bro? You bring a lamb, and I bring a whole harvest, and you get the shout out? Cain is straight up brooding, and God? Oh, he notices. But does Cain chill out? Oh no. Cain pulls his little brother Abel aside and is like, hey bro, let's take a walk out to the field. Now I'm just saying, if your angry older brother invites you to the field, that's a red flag. But Abel goes anyway because, sibling trust or whatever. And bam! Cain strikes Abel down. That's right folks, first murder in history. No CSI, no forensics, just straight up Cain losing it. Abel is gone and Cain's standing there like, well that escalated quickly. Then God rolls up like, yo Cain, where's your brother Abel? And Cain, in true guilty sibling fashion, hits us with the classic line, am I my brother's keeper? Translation, how should I know God, not my problem. But God's not having any of it. He's like, oh really? Your brother's blood is literally crying out to me from the ground. You can't lie your way out of this one. So now Cain's sweating bullets. God drops the punishment. You're cursed from the ground, man. You're going to farm, but the earth won't give you anything. You're out of here. Wanderer mode activated. Cain's like, wait, that's too harsh. If anyone finds me, they're gonna kill me. But God's like, don't worry, I'll put a mark on you so nobody kills you. You're gonna have to live with this mess you've made. So Cain gets exiled and he heads east to a place called Nod. Yep, Cain's now a wanderer in the land of Nod. Sounds like a sleepy village, but spoiler alert, there's no rest for this guy. Meanwhile, back in Adam and Eve's household, they have another son, Seth, because, things didn't exactly go well with Cain and Abel. And through Seth, humanity starts to multiply again, like rabbits, really. So that's Genesis chapter 4, folks. Family drama, jealousy, and one very bad walk to the field. And the moral? Don't let jealousy take you to a dark place, because things can go off the rails real fast. And maybe, just maybe, don't invite your angry sibling for a mysterious stroll. Alright folks, we've had drama, we've had murder, but now it's time for the Bible's version of a family reunion. Welcome to Genesis chapter 5, where the Bible turns into one giant Ancestry.com scroll. We're talking long lifespans, lots of kids, and the world's first chain of great-great-great-great-great-grandpas. So, buckle up. So first on the scene is Adam. Yeah, that Adam, our dirt clump turned human friend. Turns out Adam lived to the ripe old age of 930. That's right, 930 years. Imagine trying to plan a birthday party after your 850th candle. Just blow out the smoke, old man. Next up, we've got Seth, Adam's son. Seth lived 912 years, so basically this family was like the ultimate marathon of living. It's like, hey, Grandpa Seth, how'd you make it to 912? Seth's just like, I drank water, ate fruits, and oh yeah, had a direct line to God. Then, moving on, we've got Enosh. This guy lived 905 years. It's like each generation is playing a who can live longer game. And of course, he had sons and daughters too, because what else are you gonna do when you're 600 years old? Build more family trees. Okay, next in line is Kenan, and he lived 910 years. Honestly, at this point, I'm just imagining these guys like, yeah, just hit my 800th year, gonna go build another tent and maybe pick up a new hobby like, knitting or something. Then there's Mahalalel. I know, who names these guys, right? Anyway, Mahalalel lives 895 years. Slacker. He didn't even break 900, but still, that's basically 11 lifetimes by today's standards. Dude probably retired, unretired, and then re-retired just for fun. After him, we've got Jared. No, not the jewelry store guy. But he did live a whopping 962 years. Like, how much birthday cake do you need when you hit that milestone? Maybe God's like, okay, Jared, you're almost at 1,000, but not quite. Then things get spicy because next up is Enoch. Now, Enoch's a big deal. This guy only lived 365 years. Yeah, short-lived by these standards, but here's the twist. He didn't die. Nope. The Bible says he walked with God. And then one day he was just gone. Poof, God took him away. It's like, hey, where's Enoch? Oh, he's with God now. Everyone's probably like, wait, what, God just took him? No funeral, nothing? After Enoch, we've got Methuselah, the Methuselah. You've heard the phrase, old as Methuselah, right? Well, this guy lives 969 years. That's not just old, that's practically immortal by today's standards. And just when you thought he was gonna hit 1,000, he calls it quits. Dude probably outlived his grandkids, great-grandkids, great-great-great-grandkids. You get the idea. Then comes Lamech living a decent 777 years, and this guy has a son named Noah. Yup, that Noah. But that's a story for another day. Lamech's like, Noah buddy, you're gonna do great things, like, oh, I don't know, save the human race. No pressure though. Finally we get to Noah, who at the end of this chapter is 500 years old and about to kick off some major life events. But we'll save that for the next chapter, because spoiler alert, floods, boats, animals, crazy stuff. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is Genesis chapter 5, one big family tree with some ridiculously long lives. Honestly, I think we'd all love to live that long, but let's be real. Imagine the student loans by year 600. Yikes. So stay tuned, because in the next chapter, Noah's about to hit the scene, and trust me, you're gonna want to bring your floaties for that one. Alright folks, welcome to Genesis chapter 6, the moment where humanity officially hits rock bottom and God's like, okay, time to pull the plug and start over. Things are about to get wet, wild, and well, really sad for pretty much everyone except for one lucky dude and a boatload of animals. But we'll get to that. So here we go. Humanity's been multiplying like rabbits, people are everywhere. But guess what? They're also becoming more wicked than a reality TV reunion special. Seriously, the wickedness levels are off the charts. God's sitting up in heaven like, what is even happening down there? And here's where things get a little weird. The Bible says that the sons of God start noticing the daughters of men and are like, yo, they're pretty hot. So they swoop in and start having kids with them and bam, we've got giants walking the earth. These dudes were known as the Nephilim, and they were basically like ancient superheroes, minus the capes. But here's the kicker, all this weirdness, wickedness, and chaos really ticks God off. He looks at humanity and is like, okay, I'm done. I regret even making these people. Time to reboot Earth with a massive flood. And when God says he's going to flood the earth, he's not talking about a little rainstorm. He's talking full-blown apocalypse, like, sorry world, we're going back to square one. But wait, there's one guy who stands out. And no, it's not because he's doing TikTok dances or anything. It's Noah. The Bible says Noah was righteous, blameless, and walked with God. Basically, Noah's the guy who stayed out of trouble when the whole world turned into one big frat party gone wrong. God comes to Noah and is like, all right, Noah, I've got a plan for you. I'm going to flood the earth, but I want you to build a boat. Scratch that, an ark. And not just any ark, this thing's gonna be huge. Like we're talking cruise ship levels of big. So God gives Noah all the specs, 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, 45 feet high, you know, just your average backyard DIY project. And Noah, he's like, yeah, sure, no problem. I'll just go grab my hammer and some nails. But building the ark is only part of the plan. God's like, oh, and by the way, you're gonna need to bring every type of animal on board, male and female, because, you know, we need them to repopulate the earth after the flood. So yeah, lions, tigers, bears, everything. Noah's out here thinking, wait, so you want me to build a floating zoo? And God's like, exactly. Now let's not forget about Noah's family. He's got his wife, his 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and their wives. They're all on board with this build a giant boat and survive the apocalypse plan, literally. And so the chapter wraps up with Noah doing exactly what God commanded. No cutting corners, no, I'll get to it tomorrow. Nope. Noah's fully committed to this ark project because when God tells you there's going to be a flood that wipes out everything, you don't procrastinate. Next up, you know it's coming, the flood. So grab your umbrellas because chapter 7 is about to get wet. Alright folks, this is it. Genesis chapter 7. We've been building up to this moment, the ultimate I told you so, from Noah. The flood is coming, the animals are packed, and the world is about to get completely soaked. Grab your towels, people, because we're diving in. So, the chapter kicks off with God telling Noah, all right, Noah, it's go time. You, your family, and those animals into the ark. The storm's about to hit, and when I say storm, I mean 40 days and 40 nights of straight-up torrential downpour. Noah's like, say less, God, we're ready to roll. But here's the cool part. God's like, take 7 pairs of clean animals and 1 pair of unclean animals. You know, because even after the apocalypse, you're gonna want to have some BBQ options. So Noah's rounding up all the animals, 2 by 2, just like God said. We've got elephants, giraffes, squirrels, chickens, sloths, basically the world's biggest petting zoo. And here's Noah, probably standing at the ark's door with a checklist like, Alright, that's 2 rhinos, 2 eagles, 2... Wait, what even are you? Ah, whatever, just get on the ark. Now, Noah's family hops on board too. Noah, his wife, their 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and their wives. So it's a real family affair. You've got the humans, the animals, and I'm pretty sure Noah packed some snacks because 40 days is a long cruise without a buffet. So 7 days go by and Noah's just sitting there like, any minute now? Then boom, the rain starts pouring. And when I say pouring, I mean the skies open up and water is coming down like someone's turned on the universe's biggest fire hose. It's not just rain from the sky either. Water starts gushing up from the ground. Basically, it's like Earth is trying to drown itself. Now Noah and his crew are safely locked inside the ark. God shuts the door, probably with a big thunk. Noah's like, well, no turning back now. Outside, it's total chaos. People and animals scrambling everywhere, and Noah's just chilling on his floating fortress with his crew like, told you guys the flood was coming. And the rain doesn't stop. Day 1, pouring. Day 10, still pouring. Day 20, yeah, you guessed it, still pouring. For 40 days and 40 nights, the entire world turns into one big ocean. I'm talking full wipeout, water covering everything. Mountains, underwater, trees, gone. If you didn't make it onto Noah's Ark, you're now deep-sea diving without any gear. By the end of the 40 days, the whole Earth is underwater, and the Ark is just floating along like the world's loneliest cruise ship. There's no Wi-Fi, no Netflix, just a bunch of animals making noise. You've got to feel for Noah, though. Can you imagine being stuck on a boat with a giraffe and an elephant for 150 days? I mean, the smell alone must have been a nightmare. So it says the waters just keep rising for 150 days and everything that wasn't on the ark? Gone. Totally wiped out. It's like Earth hit the ultimate reset button. But Noah and his Ark Zoo family, they're safe, dry, and just riding it out. And that, folks, is Genesis chapter 7, the ultimate flood story. It's a downpour of epic proportions, a total global reset, and Noah's just out there chilling on his massive boat full of animals, waiting for the waters to calm down. Stay tuned for the next chapter, because when the rain finally stops, Noah's going to have a lot of cleanup to do. So, lesson of the day, if God tells you to build a giant boat, don't question it. Build the boat. Alright people, welcome to Genesis chapter 8. Last we saw Noah's out there on the world's biggest houseboat with a zoo worth of animals just floating around waiting for the water to go down. It's been 150 days of nothing but sea and sky, and let me tell you, they're probably getting real sick of the view. So, what happens next? Well, God's like, alright, time to wrap this up. And he sends a wind to help dry up the water. That's right, God basically turns on the universe's biggest blow dryer. The floodwaters start to go down, and everyone's probably like, finally, land, sweet land, here we come. But it's not like the waters disappear overnight. Nope, it's a slow process. Months go by, and finally, the ark comes to a stop on top of a mountain. And not just any mountain, it's Mount Ararat, which for Noah is basically the world's biggest parking spot. Noah's probably thinking, phew, I can't feel my legs, but at least we're not floating anymore. Now Noah's still playing it smart. He's not jumping off the ark just yet. Instead, he sends out a raven first. The bird flies around but doesn't come back. Noah's like, alright, not bad, but let's try this again. So next he sends out a dove, and this dove's like, nah dude, still too much water, and flies back to the ark. Noah's like, alright, not yet, cool. A week later, Noah sends the dove out again, and this time, bingo! The dove comes back with an olive leaf in its beak. Basically, the dove's like, yo, there's dry land out there. Noah's probably doing a little happy dance like, yes, we're almost free. Another week goes by and Noah sends out the dove one more time. This time the dove doesn't come back at all, which means it's like, peace out, Noah, I've got my own thing going on now. Noah's like, okay, now it's really time to make some moves. So God gives Noah the official all clear. He's like, alright Noah, open the doors, you're good to go. Noah throws open the ark doors and boom, freedom. Can you imagine the animals just stampeding out like it's Black Friday at the mall? Lions, tigers, bears, oh my, they're all just happy to stretch their legs again. Now here's the first thing Noah does once he's back on solid ground. He builds an altar and offers sacrifices to God, because after surviving the ultimate flood, you're gonna want to send some serious thank yous up to the big guy. Noah's basically like, thank you God for the boat, for the land, and for not making me room with the giraffes anymore. And guess what? God's loving the gesture. He smells the sacrifice and is like, alright Noah, I see you. You know what? I promise to never destroy the earth with a flood again. And God makes it official by putting a rainbow in the sky. It's like his way of saying no more world-ending floods, pinky swear. So, next time you see a rainbow, that's your reminder that God's not hitting the flood reset button again. Plus, rainbows are just cool, so win-win. And that, my friends, is Genesis chapter 8. Noah and crew finally touch down, the world gets a fresh start, and God's like, okay, we'll do better next time, right? It's the ultimate restart with a side of rainbows. But don't get too comfy, because next time we'll see what happens when Noah's family takes on the brave new world. And trust me, it gets weird again. Stay tuned for Genesis chapter 9. Welcome back, everyone. This is Genesis chapter 9, where the earth is starting from scratch. Noah and his family are about to repopulate the planet, and God's laying down some ground rules like, hey, let's make sure we don't do that again, okay? So let's get into it. Alright, so the flood's over, the ark's parked, and now it's time for the ultimate fresh start. God's talking to Noah and his sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and he's basically like, okay guys, you're up. Go out there, be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth. In other words, it's time for some serious population growth. We're talking baby booms on baby booms. Know you've been a good friend. But God doesn't stop there. He lays out some new rules for the post-flood world. First off, he's like, all right, Noah, from now on, all animals will fear humans. So basically, before this, animals were probably just chilling with people like it's no big deal, but now they're like, oh no, here comes that Noah guy again. But wait, it gets better. God's also like, oh, and by the way, you can eat them now. That's right, folks. This is when the first BBQs kick off. God's basically giving the green light to grilling. He's like, go ahead, Noah, enjoy some steaks, some chicken wings, whatever you want. But there's one rule. Don't eat the blood. The blood is off limits. So the world's first no blood in your steak rule is laid down, and I'm guessing Noah's probably like, yeah, I can work with that. Thanks for the heads up, God. And then God makes the big promise, the rainbow promise. He's like, look, I know the flood was a little intense, but I'm never doing that again. I promise to never flood the earth and wipe out all life again. And as a reminder, here's a rainbow. So now every time we see a rainbow, it's basically God saying, don't worry, I'm not flooding the world today, you're good. Alright, so everything's going great. Noah's family's out there, doing their thing, but hold up, things take a weird turn. Noah, he decides to plant a vineyard, and one thing leads to another, and the next thing you know, Noah's making some wine. And not just a little wine, a lot of wine. So Noah drinks some of that wine, and boom, next thing you know, Noah's drunk and passed out in his tent. And I'm not talking about just a little tipsy, I mean fully passed out. Like Noah's knocked out cold, and let's just say he's not exactly dressed for the occasion either. Now here comes the family drama. Ham, one of Noah's sons, walks into the tent, sees Noah totally passed out, and instead of covering him up, Ham's like, yo, check out Dad, he's out cold. He runs and tells his brothers, Shem and Japheth, who are like, dude, seriously? Shem and Japheth, being the responsible brothers, grab a cloak, walk backwards into the tent so they don't even look at Noah and cover him up. They're like, let's not embarrass Dad more than he's already embarrassed himself. Now, Noah eventually wakes up, and when he finds out what happened, he's not happy. He curses Ham's son, Canaan, which, let's be real, poor Canaan didn't even do anything here. But Noah's ticked off, and that's how it goes. So yeah, one minute Noah's the hero of the flood, and the next he's getting drunk and passing out in his tent, cursing his grandkids. The Bible doesn't sugarcoat anything, does it? It's like, even the righteous dudes have their messy moments. And that's Genesis chapter 9. God's laying down post-flood rules, rainbows are popping up, and Noah, well, let's just say he's learning that wine and vineyards can lead to some unexpected situations. But hey, even biblical heroes have their off days, right? So there you have it. The world's restarting, Noah's family is branching out, and the first ever BBQ is happening. But stay tuned, because next up, things are gonna get even weirder when humanity tries to build a tower to the heavens in the next chapter. You don't want to miss that. Alright folks, buckle up. Genesis chapter 10 is basically one big family tree, and we're gonna dive into who's related to who and where all these new nations came from. Think of it like an ancient version of Ancestry.com, but with way cooler names. So here we go. The Table of Nations. Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. These 3 guys, they're the founding fathers of everyone who repopulates the earth. It's like the ultimate family reunion, except, you know, after a global flood. First up, we've got Japheth's descendants. Japheth's family moves up north and spreads out into different regions. And the names? We've got Gomer, Magog, Javan, Tubal, and Meshech. Sounds like the lineup of a heavy metal band, doesn't it? These guys become the ancestors of people living in Europe and Asia, so if you're thinking, wait, are these my great-great-great-grand cousins? Well, maybe. Next we have Ham's descendants. Now, Ham's family takes over the southern regions and things get interesting. Ham's sons? We've got Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan. Remember Canaan from chapter 9? Yeah, Noah cursed him. So let's just say he didn't exactly get off to the best start in life. But Ham's family goes on to do some big things. Cush's descendants include Nimrod, and yes, that's his actual name. Nimrod becomes the world's first mighty warrior and builds some of the first cities like Babylon and Nineveh. So this guy, total city planner and tough guy combo. Meanwhile, Mizraim's descendants settle in Egypt, and the Canaanites take over the area that becomes the Promised Land. So yeah, a lot of key players coming out of Ham's family tree. Even though Ham kinda messed up in the last chapter, his family making serious moves. And last but not least, we've got Shem's descendants. Shem's family sticks around the Middle East, and these guys are the ancestors of the Hebrews, so pretty important, right? We've got names like Elam, Asher, Arphaxad, try saying that 3 times fast, and more. These dudes go on to form the nations of the Middle East, and eventually, the family line leads to Abraham, but that's a story for later. So that's Genesis chapter 10, the family tree of all family trees. You've got nations, cities, warriors, and some pretty wild names. If you've ever wanted to impress someone by rattling off ancient genealogies, well, here's your chance. In summary, we've got Japheth's crew spreading out into Europe and Asia, Ham's descendants taking over Africa and parts of the Middle East, and Shem's family becoming the ancestors of the Hebrews. It's like a global game of who's related to who, but with a lot more ancient cities being built. Stay tuned, because next up is Genesis chapter 11, and things are about to get weird. We're talking about the Tower of Babel. Humans are going to try to build their way to heaven, and spoiler alert, God's not impressed. You won't want to miss that one. Welcome to Genesis chapter 11, where humans are about to pull a major stunt and think they can outbuild their way to heaven. It's the OG man versus God story, and spoiler alert, it doesn't end well for the humans. Let's do this. So here's the setup. After the flood, everyone's speaking the same language. That's right, one universal language. Everyone can communicate with each other. No Google Translate needed. And at first, things are going great. They're all chilling in a place called Shinar, and someone gets a bright idea. Hey, let's build a tower. And not just any tower, a tower that reaches all the way to heaven. So now it's basically like an ancient construction project on steroids. They start making bricks, stacking them up, and they're like, bro, we're gonna make the biggest, baddest tower the world has ever seen. It's like the ultimate flex. Like they're saying, we don't need God, we'll just build our way up to him. Now, cut to God up in heaven watching this unfold. He's looking down, shaking his head like, what are these humans doing? It's like when you leave kids alone for 5 minutes and suddenly they've decided to paint the walls with peanut butter. So God's like, alright, if I let them keep doing this, they're gonna get even crazier ideas. Time to shut this party down. And here's how he does it. He scrambles their language. Yup, he literally flips the switch, and suddenly, nobody understands each other anymore. 1 second everyone's like, pass the bricks, bro, and the next they're like, wait, what did you just say? It's the ultimate communication breakdown. People are walking around like, why are you speaking gibberish? Everyone's confused, frustrated, and the whole tower project comes to a screeching halt. Imagine trying to finish a building when your entire team is suddenly speaking in different languages. Total chaos. So the humans, realizing their tower dreams are toast, start spreading out all over the earth. God's basically like, yeah, that's more like it. Go fill the earth like I told you, instead of trying to build some mega tower to the sky. And that's how the place got the name Babel, because God literally Babelized their language. They wanted to build up to heaven. God's like, here, enjoy some linguistic confusion instead. And that's the Tower of Babel, folks. Humans thought they could outbuild God, but God's like, nice try, but no. He scrambles their speech, the tower project tanks, and they all scatter across the planet. It's a major lesson in stay in your lane, humans. So, in conclusion, they thought they could build their way up to the heavens. God, he hit them with a communication curveball, and suddenly, it's a big old tower of nope. They scatter, the tower stays unfinished, and languages are officially a thing. But don't go anywhere, because next up we're getting into some serious family drama with Abram. That's right, the future Abraham. He's about to go on a wild journey with God, and trust me, things are going to get even more epic. Stay tuned for Genesis chapter 12. Alright, welcome to Genesis chapter 12, where we meet Abram, the future Abraham, aka the guy God picks to start a whole new nation. It's like, hey Abram, pack your bags, I'm sending you on the wildest road trip of your life. Let's get into it. So, here's the scene. Abram's just chilling in this place called Haran when God shows up and is like, Abram, I've got some big plans for you. I want you to leave everything behind. Your country, your family, your Netflix password, everything. Just go to this land I'll show you. And what's in it for Abram? God promises 3 huge things: land, a big old family, even though Abram's pushing 75 with no kids, and a reputation so great that people are going to be like, whoa, you're that Abram? Now most people would be like, wait, where exactly are we going, God? But not Abram. He's like, say no more, fam. Abram packs up everything, grabs his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, and all his stuff, and hits the road. And remember, he doesn't even know where he's going, he's just trusting God's mysterious destination GPS. Abram, Sarai, and Lot are now traveling through the land of Canaan. And when Abram gets there, God's like, yep, this is the place. This is the land I'm giving to your descendants. Abram's probably looking around like, okay, cool, but you know I don't have any kids, right? But God's like, trust the process, Abram. So what does Abram do? He builds an altar, kind of like his way of saying, thanks for the land, God. Looking forward to seeing how this whole descendants thing works out. But the adventure doesn't stop there. Next thing you know, a famine hits the land, like no food, nothing, so Abram's like, alright, guess we're going down to Egypt for a bit. But before they roll into Egypt, Abram turns to Sarai and says, okay Sarai, listen, you're really beautiful, and when the Egyptians see you, they're going to want you. They might even kill me just to take you, so, let's tell them you're my sister instead of my wife. Cool? Cool. Yeah, this plan is kind of sketchy, but hey, Abram's working with what he's got, so they roll into Egypt, and sure enough, Pharaoh's like, whoa, who's that? She's beautiful. Pharaoh takes Sarai into his palace, thinking she's Abram's sister. And Abram? Well, Pharaoh starts giving him gifts. Sheep, cattle, gold, the works. Abram's raking in the goods while Sarai's stuck living in the palace like, this was not part of the plan, Abram. But hold up, God's not cool with this. He sends plagues on Pharaoh's house, and Pharaoh's like, wait a minute, why is everything going wrong all of a sudden? Somehow, he figures out that Sarai is actually Abram's wife, not his sister. And Pharaoh's like, dude, why didn't you tell me? You almost got me in serious trouble with your God. So Pharaoh's like, take your wife, take your stuff, and get out of here. Abram's like, yeah, thanks, we'll just go. No hard feelings, right? And they leave Egypt with more stuff than they came with. I mean, Abram walked in worried about survival and walked out with a full-on riches upgrade. Talk about coming out ahead. And that, folks, is Genesis chapter 12, the beginning of Abram's epic journey with God. He leaves home, gets promised a whole new land and family, pulls a questionable move in Egypt, and still walks away with a ton of loot. Classic Abram. So, what's in it for you? Abram's got promises from God, a mysterious road trip, an Egyptian royal drama, and a seriously smooth escape. But the adventure's just beginning. Next up, Abram's family is about to get a little too big for one spot, and trust me, you don't want to miss the drama coming in Genesis chapter 13. Alright, welcome to Genesis chapter 13, where we pick up right after Abram and Sarai's escape from Egypt. Spoiler alert, Abram's got a lot of riches now. Livestock, gold, silver. This guy's basically rolling in ancient currency. But with great riches come great family drama. Let's jump into it. So here's the deal. Abram and his nephew Lot are traveling together, and they've got so much stuff, flocks, herds, tents, that the land can't handle both of them. Picture it. Every day, Abram's sheep and Lot's sheep are like, yo, this grass is mine. Meanwhile, their herdsmen are bickering like toddlers fighting over toys. It's getting ridiculous. Abram's like, okay, Lot, we've got to sort this out. We're family, we shouldn't be fighting over whose sheep are munching on whose grass. Let's just split up and give each other some space. So Abram, being the chill uncle he is, gives Lot the first choice. You pick where you want to go, and I'll go the other way. Now this is prime real estate we're talking about, and Abram's letting Lot have first dibs. Talk about being generous. So Lot looks around and spots the Jordan Valley, and let me tell you, this place is lush, like water everywhere, fertile land. It's basically the ancient version of beachfront property. Lot's like, I'm taking that. And he heads off to live near the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. And, spoiler alert, those cities, not exactly known for their moral high ground, but Lot's like, whatever, it looks nice. Abram, meanwhile, heads in the opposite direction to the land of Canaan. And God shows up again, giving Abram a pep talk like, Abram, check it out. Look around you, north, south, east, west. All this land is going to be yours and your descendants forever. And about those descendants, I'm talking about so many people, they're going to be like the dust of the earth. Try counting dust particles sometime, that's how big your family's going to be. Abram's probably like, okay God, I still don't have any kids, but you keep saying this so I'll just keep trusting you. And what does Abram do? He builds another altar, his way of being like, thanks God for the land and the dust-sized future family. I'm in. So to recap, Abram and Lot split up because their sheep are causing traffic jams. Lot moves to the lush but shady neighborhood of Sodom, and Abram heads to Canaan, where God reassures him with more epic promises. And Abram, he's cool with it, setting up camp and building more altars. Next up, things are about to get crazy because Lot? Yeah, he's gonna need a rescue mission. And guess who's going to have to bail him out? You guessed it, Uncle Abram. Stay tuned for Genesis chapter 14, where Abram turns into an action hero to save the day. You're not gonna want to miss that one. Welcome to Genesis chapter 14, aka Abram the Action Hero. Things are about to get wild because we've got kings, wars, and a good old family rescue mission. Oh yeah, Abram's about to go Liam Neeson in taking on these guys. Let's roll. So here's the setup. We've got a bunch of kings going at it. 5 kings versus 4 kings, and they're battling it out in this place called the Valley of Siddim, which, by the way, is full of tar pits. Yeah, tar pits. Not exactly ideal battlegrounds, but I guess ancient warfare didn't come with a lot of options. Now, among the unlucky bunch in the losing team is the king of Sodom. And guess who's living near Sodom? Our guy Lot. So when the bad guys win, they roll into Sodom and take all the people and goods, including, you guessed it, Lot and his stuff. Lot's probably like, oh no, this is bad, Uncle Abram's gonna kill me. Word gets back to Abram. Hey, so, your nephew Lot? Yeah, he's been kidnapped by this coalition of kings. And Abram's like, oh heck no, not on my watch. So what does he do? He rounds up 318 trained men from his own household. Yep, that's right, Abram's got his own little army. And he sets off to rescue Lot. Picture Abram leading his squad like, we're getting my nephew back. Abram and his crew track the bad guys all the way to a place called Dan. And then, they pull off a full-on night raid. Abram splits his forces, they attack from multiple sides, and boom! They defeat the enemy and recover everything. Lot, his people, all the goods, the whole lot, pun intended. Abram rolls back with all the spoils like a straight-up war hero. Now, after the victory, Abram's on his way back, and he runs into this mysterious dude named Melchizedek. This guy's the king of Salem and also a priest of God Most High. He blesses Abram and says, "Blessed be Abram by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, and praise be to God who delivered your enemies into your hand." But the drama's not over. The king of Sodom rolls up and is like, "Yo, Abram, thanks for saving my people. You can keep all the goods, just give me back my citizens." And what does Abram say? "Nope, I don't want a single thing from you, not even a shoelace. I don't want anyone saying I made Abram rich." He's basically like, keep your stuff, I don't need it, God's got me. And that's how Abram rolls. Rescues his nephew, refuses the loot, and walks away with his head held high, knowing he did the right thing. I mean, if this was an action movie, this would be the part where the hero walks off into the sunset with epic music playing in the background. Total legend. So to wrap it up, Lot gets kidnapped, Abram goes full Rambo, rescues him, meets Melchizedek, drops a tenth of the spoils, and turns down the king of Sodom's shady offer. Abram's like, I don't need your stuff, I've got God on my side. What a boss move. Next up, God's about to drop some serious promises on Abram. We're talking covenant level stuff. Things are getting deep in Genesis chapter 15, so don't go anywhere. Alright, welcome to Genesis chapter 15, where God and Abram sit down for a serious convo. And Abram's like, hey God, you've been promising me descendants for a while now, but still no kids? And God, he's about to drop some major revelations. Let's dive in. So, Abram's chilling when God shows up and says, don't be afraid, Abram, I'm your shield, your very great reward. But Abram's like, God, not to be ungrateful, but what good is all this stuff if I don't have a son? You keep promising me descendants, but right now, everything I own is going to my servant Eliezer. Abram's basically saying, God, where's the kid you promised? God's like, hold up, Abram. Eliezer's not going to inherit your stuff. You're going to have your own son, and he's going to be your heir. Then God takes Abram outside and says, look up at the sky and count the stars, if you can even count them. That's how many descendants you're going to have. And here's the kicker. Abram believes God. He's like, all right, God, I trust you. And what does God do? He credits it to him as righteousness. This is one of those big theological moments, folks. Abram trusts God, and God's like, that's what I'm talking about. But it doesn't stop there. God's like, I brought you out of Ur of the Chaldeans to give you this land. And Abram's like, okay, but how can I know that I'm going to possess it? It's like Abram saying, God, I trust you, but a little confirmation wouldn't hurt, right? And then things get real intense. God tells Abram to bring a bunch of animals, like a heifer, a goat, a ram, a dove, and a pigeon. Abram cuts them in half and lays the pieces opposite each other. It's like a covenant ritual. And Abram's waiting and waiting. And suddenly some birds of prey come down to snack on the carcasses, but Abram's like, not today, birds, and chases them away. Then, as the sun's setting, Abram falls into a deep sleep, and boom, a terrifying darkness comes over him. God speaks to Abram in the middle of this darkness like, know for sure, Abram, that your descendants are going to be strangers in a land that's not theirs. They'll be enslaved and oppressed for 400 years, but don't worry, I'll punish the nation that enslaves them, and afterward, they'll come out with great wealth. God's basically giving Abram a heads up about what's going to happen to his future family in Egypt. Yep, that's a foreshadowing. But God also reassures Abram, you though, you'll live to a ripe old age and your descendants will come back to this land after 4 generations. And then, in this wild scene, a smoking fire pot and a blazing torch appear and pass between the pieces of the animals. It's like God's making a visual contract with Abram. This is the covenant moment, folks. God's like, I'm locking this in. This land, from the river of Egypt to the Euphrates, is going to belong to your descendants. And that's the intense climax of Genesis chapter 15. God makes a solemn covenant with Abram, promising him countless descendants, and a land that's basically the size of a small empire. Abram's got no kids yet, but he's got God's word, and that's all he needs. So to sum up, Abram's worried about his lack of a son. God shows up with promises bigger than the night sky, and they make an epic covenant involving stars, split animals, and some supernatural fire. Oh, and a little prophecy about Abram's descendants getting stuck in Egypt for 400 years. But hey, everything's gonna work out in the end. Next up, things are about to get really complicated for Abram's family life. There's a whole situation with Sarai, Abram, and Sarai's servant Hagar that's about to unfold. Trust me, Genesis chapter 16 is drama central. Stay tuned. Welcome to Genesis chapter 16, where Sarai and Abram decide that patience isn't their strong suit, and things go way off the rails. If you thought the last chapter was intense, just wait for this. Let's get into the family drama. So here's the setup. It's been a while since God made those epic promises to Abram about descendants, and guess what? Sarai is still childless. She's getting frustrated and she's like, Abram, this whole waiting game isn't working for me. I've got a plan. And Abram's probably thinking, oh boy, here we go. Sarai comes up with a bright idea. Why don't you sleep with my servant Hagar? Maybe she can have a baby for us. That way, I can build a family through her. And Abram's like, okay, if that's what you want. Talk about a classic case of, I'll do whatever it takes to get a kid. So, Sarai gives Hagar to Abram as a wife, and boom, Hagar gets pregnant. Now Hagar's strutting around like she's queen of the world. You know how it goes, once she's got that baby bump. Barren lady? Not a great move, Hagar. Sarai's feeling all kinds of jealous and hurt, and she goes to Abram, this is your fault. I'm the one who brought Hagar into this mess, and now she's treating me like dirt. You better do something about it. Abram's response, hey, it's your servant, do what you want. Classic guy move, just trying to stay out of the drama. So Sarai starts treating Hagar so harshly that Hagar's like, I can't take this anymore, and she runs away. But then, out in the wilderness, an angel of the Lord finds Hagar by a spring of water and says, Hagar, where are you going? Hagar's like, I'm running away from Sarai. The angel tells her, return to your mistress and submit to her. And guess what? You're going to have a son, and you're going to name him Ishmael because the Lord has heard your misery. Hagar's probably like, whoa, I didn't see that coming. The angel continues, Ishmael will be a wild donkey of a man, and his hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand will be against him. It's like the angels saying, this kid's going to have a tough life, but he's going to be a fighter. Hagar's mind is blown, and she names the Lord who spoke to her El Roy, which means the God who sees me. She's like, I've seen the one who sees me. What a moment. So, Hagar goes back to Abram and Sarai, and eventually she has a son, Ishmael. Abram's 86 years old at this point, so yeah, he's not exactly a young dad. And thus begins the saga of Abram's family drama. To wrap it up, Sarai and Abram try to take matters into their own hands. Hagar gets pregnant, drama ensues, and Hagar ends up in the wilderness talking to an angel, and Ishmael is born, setting the stage for some serious future complications. Next up, we're diving into Genesis chapter 17, where God's going to give Abram a new name and some more promises. Trust me, things are about to get even more interesting. Welcome to Genesis chapter 17, where Abram's about to get a new name, some serious promises, and, well, let's just say things are going to get a little uncomfortable. Yeah, you'll see what I mean in a minute. Let's dive in. So, Abram is now 99 years old. Yup, dude's almost hitting the big 100 and still no promised kid with Sarai. But then, boom, God shows up and says, I am God Almighty. Walk before me faithfully and be blameless. Abram's like, all right, let's see what you've got for me this time. But God's not done. He's like, oh, and by the way, kings are going to come from your descendants. This isn't just a one-generation thing. We're talking long-term family dynasty. I'll be your God and your descendants' God, and the land of Canaan, yeah, that's theirs forever. Big promises, folks. But the surprises don't stop there. God's like, oh, and Sarai, she's getting a new name too. From now on, she'll be called Sarah, and I'm going to bless her. She's going to give you a son. Abraham's like, LOL, what? I'm 100 and Sarah's 90. How is this even possible? But God's like, don't worry, Abraham, you're going to name your son Isaac, which means laughter, because you laughed at this whole idea. And I'll make a covenant with him and his descendants after him. Now, Abraham's still trying to process all this when he remembers Ishmael. He's like, hey God, what about Ishmael? Can you bless him too? And God's like, don't worry, I've got Ishmael covered. He's going to be the father of 12 rulers, and I'll make him into a great nation too. But Isaac's the one I'm making my everlasting covenant with. So, Abraham goes back to his camp, gathers all his men, yeah, all of them, and they go through with the circumcision thing. No excuses. Abraham, Ishmael, every guy in the household, all get circumcised that day. I'm guessing that was one quiet camp for a while. And that's how Genesis chapter 17 ends. Abraham gets a new name, Sarah gets a new name, the covenant gets renewed with a serious requirement, and Isaac is officially on the way. If you thought things were getting interesting, wait until Isaac actually shows up. But for now, Abraham's holding on to that promise and, well, recovering from his part of the covenant. Next up, we're going to see some mysterious visitors drop by Abraham's tent, and God's going to have a serious conversation about a couple of cities that are about to go up in smoke. Genesis chapter 18 is going to be wild, so stay tuned. Welcome to Genesis chapter 18, where three mysterious visitors show up at Abraham's crib, drop some jaw-dropping news about Sarah, and God and Abraham have a heated negotiation about Sodom and Gomorrah. Buckle up, because things are about to get crazy. So, Abraham's just chilling by his tent in the heat of the day when he looks up and, boom, he sees three men standing nearby. Now, Abraham's no fool. He's like, these aren't just any ordinary dudes. And he runs to them like, hey, don't leave. Let me hook you up with some food and water. And the three guys are like, all right, we'll stick around. So Abraham rushes into the tent and tells Sarah, quick, make some fresh bread. And then he runs to get a nice juicy calf for a servant to prepare. Basically, Abraham's going all out with this feast. He's got curds, milk, the whole 9 yards. The three visitors sit down to eat, and Abraham's standing there like a nervous waiter making sure everything's perfect. Then one of the visitors drops the bombshell. Where's your wife Sarah? Abraham's like, oh, she's in the tent. And then the visitor says, I'll be back next year, and by then, Sarah's going to have a son. And Sarah, eavesdropping from inside the tent, just laughs, like legit laughs out loud. She's like, yeah, right, I'm 90 years old and my husband's as good as dead. We're having a baby? Sure thing, pal. But the visitor calls her out. He's like, why did Sarah laugh? Is anything too hard for the Lord? I'll be back and Sarah will have a son. Sarah gets all defensive and says, I didn't laugh. And the visitor's like, oh, but you did. And you can just picture Sarah standing there like busted. Now things take a serious turn. The three visitors get up to leave and Abraham walks with them for a bit. Then God's like, should I hide from Abraham what I'm about to do? and he decides to clue Abraham in on the plan. He says, "The outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is so great and their sin is so grievous, I'm going down to see if it's as bad as the reports." Abraham's probably thinking, uh-oh, this is about to get bad. So he steps up and goes into negotiation mode. He's like, wait, God, are you really going to wipe out the righteous along with the wicked? What if there are 50 righteous people in the city? Are you going to destroy them too? God's like, all right, Abraham, if I find 50 righteous people in Sodom, I'll spare the whole place. But Abraham's not done. He's like, okay, but what if the number's just 5 less than that? What if there are only 45? And God's like, fine, I won't destroy it if I find 45. And Abraham keeps going, like a guy haggling at a market. What about 40? I won't destroy it for 40. Okay, but what about 30? If I find 30, I'll spare it. And Abraham's like, okay, don't get mad, but what about 20? God's like, still won't destroy it for 20. And then Abraham goes for broke. What about 10? And God says, all right, if I find 10 righteous people there, I won't destroy it. Then the Lord leaves, and Abraham goes back home. And you can almost hear Abraham thinking, man, I hope there are at least 10 good people in that place. Spoiler alert. Things aren't looking great for Sodom and Gomorrah, but that's a story for the next chapter. To sum up, 3 mysterious visitors drop by, Sarah laughs at the idea of having a baby, and Abraham goes into full-on bargaining mode with God about Sodom and Gomorrah. Genesis chapter 18 is 1 part miraculous news, 1 part intense negotiation. And next up, the fate of those 2 sinful cities is about to be sealed. Get ready for Genesis chapter 19, because it's going to be wild. Welcome to Genesis chapter 19, where we've got angels busting into town, people trying to throw the worst block party ever, and then, boom, Sodom and Gomorrah go up in flames. Oh, and there's a salty twist at the end. Let's get into it. So here's the setup. 2 angels roll into Sodom in the evening. Lot is chilling at the city gate, and when he sees them, he's like, oh snap, those aren't your average visitors. Lot runs up and says, hey, why don't you guys stay at my house tonight? You don't want to be out in the streets here after dark. The angels are like, nah, we'll just stay in the square. But Lot knows the kind of freaky stuff that goes down in Sodom after sunset, so he's like, nope, not happening. You're coming with me. And he practically drags them to his house. He makes a big meal for them, thinking everything's cool, right? Well, not so fast. Because before they even finish eating, the entire town of Sodom, yeah, we're talking men from every part of the city, shows up at Lot's house. They're banging on the door like, hey, Lot, we saw those 2 guys come in. Bring them out so we can, get to know them better. And let's just say they didn't mean a friendly game of cards. At this point, the angels pull Lot back inside, and then boom, they strike the crowd with blindness. All those guys outside are stumbling around, bumping into each other, totally disoriented. The angels are like, all right, time to get out of here, Lot. God's about to nuke this place, and you don't want to be here when it happens. So the angels tell Lot, get your family and leave, right now. God's going to destroy the city. Lot tries to get his future sons-in-law to come, but they think he's joking. They're like, lol, destruction? Yeah, sure, Lot. So, it's just Lot, his wife, and their 2 daughters. Then it happens. The moment Lot and his family get to Zoar, God rains down fire and brimstone on Sodom and Gomorrah. The whole place is obliterated. Smoke rising like from a massive furnace. It's total destruction. But wait, there's a twist. Lot's wife, who's been told not to look back, well, she looks back. And just like that, bam, she turns into a pillar of salt. Talk about instant karma. I mean, she couldn't resist one little glance and boom, she's a salt statue. I guess you could say she was a little salty about leaving Sodom. Bottoms. Meanwhile, Abraham's watching all this go down from a distance. He sees the smoke rising and realizes, well, there weren't even 10 righteous people in that city after all. And now, for the bizarre ending. Lot and his daughters escape to the mountains, and here's where things get super weird. Lot's daughters start thinking, there's no men left, so how are we going to continue our family line? They come up with a plan. Let's get dad drunk and, have kids with him. Yep, that happens. And they both end up pregnant by their own father. The older daughter gives birth to a son named Moab, who becomes the ancestor of the Moabites. The younger daughter has a son named Ben-Ami, who becomes the ancestor of the Ammonites. And that's how chapter 19 ends, with a literal firestorm and one of the strangest family situations in the Bible. To sum it up, the angels roll into town, the people of Sodom are, well, terrible. God wipes out the city with fire. Lot's wife turns into a pillar of salt for looking back, and Lot's daughters, they take family planning into their own hands in a way that nobody saw coming. Genesis chapter 19 is like a soap opera meets a disaster movie. Stay tuned for chapter 20, where Abraham pulls off yet another's "he's my sister" stunt, because of course he does. Welcome to Genesis chapter 20, where Abraham's back on his "she's my sister" BS. This time we've got a new king, a furious God, and a whole lot of awkwardness. Let's see how Abraham wriggles his way out of this one. So, Abraham's been doing some traveling and he ends up in this place called Gerar. And just like last time, he's probably looking around like, these guys might kill me if they know Sarah's my wife. I know. I'll just tell them she's my sister again. That worked out great last time. Sure enough, Abraham pulls his old trick. He says to the king of Gerar, a guy named Abimelech, "Oh yeah, Sarah, she's my sister." And Abimelech's like, "Sweet, I'll take her for myself." So he takes Sarah into his palace, probably thinking he just scored big. But here's where things get spicy. That night, God shows up to Abimelech in a dream and he's mad. God's like, "You're as good as dead because you took another man's wife." Abimelech wakes up in a cold sweat like, whoa, wait, I didn't know she was married. The guy told me she was his sister, I'm innocent. So Abimelech gets up early the next morning, he's not wasting any time, and he calls all his officials together. He tells them what happened and they're all freaked out. Like, can you imagine the gossip going around that palace? Yo, the king almost got us cursed because of some guy's wife. Then Abimelech calls in Abraham, and let me tell you, he's not happy. He's like, "Dude, what have you done to us? Why'd you lie and tell me she's your sister? You almost got us all killed." And Abraham's like, "Well, I figured you guys had no fear of God here, and I thought you'd kill me for Sarah. So, I just kind of went with the sister thing." Abimelech's like, "Okay, fine, whatever, just take your wife back." But he doesn't stop there. He gives Abraham a bunch of sheep, cattle, and servants, and he's like, "Here's a ton of stuff to make up for this whole situation. Oh, and I'm giving you land to live on. Stay wherever you want in my kingdom." Then Abimelech turns to Sarah and says, "Look, I gave your brother, your husband, lots of money as a public apology, so nobody's gonna say anything bad about you. We're all good now, right?" I'm guessing Sarah's just standing there like, "Yeah, sure, let's pretend this wasn't super awkward." Then just like that, Abraham prays to God and boom, everything's back to normal. See, God had actually closed all the wombs in Abimelech's household because of the whole taking Sarah thing. But after Abraham prays, God heals everyone, and the women in Abimelech's palace can have kids again. So yeah, Genesis chapter 20. Abraham pulls the same "she's my sister" stunt, God gets mad, Abimelech freaks out, and in the end, Abraham walks away with even more wealth. You'd think after the first time he'd have learned his lesson, but nope, Abraham's gonna be Abraham. Next up, Genesis chapter 21, where the long-awaited baby Isaac finally shows up, and things get real messy with Hagar and Ishmael. We're talking sibling drama on a whole new level. Stay tuned. Welcome to Genesis chapter 21, where the miracle baby Isaac finally arrives and then, well, things get super tense between Sarah and Hagar. We're talking baby mama drama at a biblical level. Let's jump into it. So after years of waiting, God comes through on his promise and Sarah finally gets pregnant. At the ripe old age of 90, Sarah gives birth to a son, and they name him Isaac, which means he laughs. Why? Because Sarah legit laughed when she first heard the idea of having a kid at her age. And now, here she is, a 90-year-old mom, and you can just picture her like, well, didn't see this coming. Abraham? Dude's 100 years old when Isaac is born. He's probably like, yeah, I still got it. So they throw a massive party when Isaac is weaned, and everything seems great for a hot minute. But then, enter the drama. See, here's the thing. Remember Hagar? She's the servant Sarah gave to Abraham back in the day so they could have a kid through her. Yeah, well, Hagar's son Ishmael is still around, and he's not exactly thrilled about baby Isaac stealing the spotlight. In fact, one day Sarah catches Ishmael making fun of Isaac and she snaps. Sarah goes straight to Abraham, all fired up, and says, "Get rid of that slave woman and her son. I don't want Ishmael sharing the inheritance with my son, Isaac." It's like, whoa, Sarah, that's a little harsh. But you can't really blame her. She's been waiting forever for this moment, and now she's not about to let anyone mess with her baby boy. Abraham's in a tough spot, though. He loves Ishmael. It's his son, after all, and he doesn't want to just kick him out. But then God steps in and says, "Don't worry, Abraham, listen to Sarah. Isaac is the son I've chosen for your line, but I'll take care of Ishmael too. He's going to become a great nation." So, early the next morning, Abraham gives Hagar some food and water and sends her and Ishmael off into the desert. Brutal, right? I mean, can you imagine Hagar out there wandering around with her teenage son, no home, no hope? At one point, they're so desperate, Hagar puts Ishmael under a bush and walks away because she can't bear to watch him die of thirst. But just when all hope seems lost, God shows up. An angel calls out to Hagar like, "Don't be afraid, God's heard Ishmael crying and he's got a plan. Go lift him up because he's going to become a great nation." Then, miracle alert, God opens Hagar's eyes and she sees a well of water. She and Ishmael survive, and he goes on to live in the wilderness, growing up to become an archer. Pretty epic, right? Meanwhile, back with Abraham, everything's calm. He's chilling with his new son Isaac, and Abimelech shows up. Yeah, the same guy from the "she's my sister" fiasco in the last chapter. Abimelech's like, "Listen bro, you're clearly blessed by God, so let's make a treaty. I don't want any trouble between us." They hash out a deal over a well of water that Abraham claims he dug. And they swear an oath, basically, "You don't mess with me, I won't mess with you." And from then on, the place is called Beersheba, which means well of the oath. Abraham plants a tree there, and he calls on the name of the Lord, the everlasting God. A nice, peaceful way to wrap up this chapter after all that drama. So, to sum it up, Isaac finally arrives. Hagar and Ishmael get sent packing, but God saves them in the desert. And just when you think the family drama is over, there's a treaty thrown in with the king. Genesis chapter 21 has got miracles, heartbreak, and some tense negotiations. But hey, that's just another day in the life of Abraham. Welcome to Genesis chapter 22, where God's like, "Hey, Abraham, you know that miracle kid I just gave you? Yeah, I need you to sacrifice him." And Abraham's like, "Wait, what? Things are about to get heavy, so let's jump right in." So here's how it all starts. God calls out to Abraham like, "Hey, Abraham." And Abraham's all, "Here I am, Lord." Probably thinking it's another "you're gonna be blessed" conversation. But then God drops the bomb. "Take your son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering." So, they're traveling for 3 days, 3 whole days, with Abraham probably agonizing inside, but he doesn't say a word. Finally, they get to the mountain and Abraham tells his servants, "Stay here while Isaac and I go up to worship. We'll be back soon." Notice he says "we," like he's holding on to some hope that they'll both be coming back. Then Isaac, innocent, unsuspecting Isaac, asks the most gut-wrenching question, Dad? We've got the fire and the wood, but where's the lamb for the burnt offering?" And Abraham's like, "Don't worry, son. God will provide the lamb." But deep down, Abraham's probably thinking, "Please, God, really provide that lamb." So they get to the top, and Abraham builds the altar, arranges the wood, and ties up Isaac. Yeah, Abraham legit ties up his own son and lays him on the altar. I can't even imagine how Isaac's feeling at this point, but here's the wild part. Isaac doesn't fight back. He's just trusting his dad. And just as Abraham raises the knife to sacrifice Isaac, boom, an angel of the Lord calls out, "Abraham, Abraham!" Abraham freezes, knife in hand, and the angel's like, "Do not lay a hand on the boy. Now I know you fear God because you didn't withhold your son from me." Talk about nerves of steel, man. Abraham must have been sweating bullets. Then, like a perfect movie twist, Abraham looks up and sees a ram caught in a thicket by its horns. God literally provides the sacrifice just like Abraham had said. So Abraham sacrifices the ram instead of Isaac, and he names the place Jehovah-Jireh, meaning the Lord will provide. And yeah, God definitely provided at the last second here. But that's not all. After the sacrifice, the angel calls out to Abraham again saying, "Because you didn't withhold your son, your only son, I'm gonna bless you like crazy. Your descendants will be as numerous as the stars in the sky and the sand on the seashore. And through your offspring, all nations on earth will be blessed." Basically, this is God's way of saying, "You passed the ultimate test, Abraham." So Abraham and Isaac head back down the mountain, probably in total relief, and they return to Beersheba to live there. But man, you gotta wonder what the conversation between Abraham and Isaac was like on the way home. "Hey Dad, so about that whole sacrifice thing, we good?" So yeah, that's Genesis chapter 22. Abraham faces the ultimate test of faith. Isaac almost gets sacrificed, and God shows up in the nick of time with a ram. It's intense, it's emotional, and it's got one of the biggest plot twists in the Bible. Next up, Genesis 23, where we take a break from the action and deal with the death of Sarah. It's a more somber chapter, but still important.
All right, welcome to Genesis chapter 23, where we hit pause on all the action and deal with something we all gotta face at some point: death. Sarah, Abraham's wife, passes away at the age of 127, and Abraham's got to figure out how to give her a proper burial. It's a more serious chapter, but still an important one, so let's get into it. So, Sarah dies in a place called Kiriath Arba, which is also known as Hebron in the land of Canaan. And let me tell you, Abraham is devastated. He mourns for her, probably reflecting on all they've been through together. I mean, they've had some crazy adventures, leaving their homeland, dealing with famine, Hagar and Ishmael, and, of course, finally having Isaac when they were both way past their prime. It's the end of an era. But after he's done mourning, Abraham's like, okay, I need to find a place to bury her. Here's the thing. Abraham's living in Canaan, but he doesn't actually own any land there. So he's got to go to the Hittites, the people who live in the area, and ask to buy a piece of land for a burial site. He shows up to the Hittites and says, look, I'm a foreigner here, but I need a burial site for my wife. Can you sell me some land? And the Hittites, these guys are super respectful. They're like, Abraham, you're a prince of God among us. Take whatever piece of land you want, no one's gonna say no to you. But Abraham's not looking for handouts. He's like, thanks, but I want to pay for it. There's this cave at the end of a field owned by a guy named Ephron. Let me buy it at full price. So Ephron's there and he's like, but bro, come on. You can have the cave for free. It's just a cave. Take it. But Abraham's not backing down. He insists on paying for it. And finally, Ephron's like, all right, if you insist, it's 400 shekels of silver. Now, I don't know what the going rate for land was back then, but 400 shekels sounds like a pretty hefty price. Still, Abraham doesn't even flinch. He weighs out the silver and buys the land fair and square. So, Abraham buys the field with the cave of Machpelah, and it becomes the family burial site. He buries Sarah there, and from then on, that land is Abraham's, his first actual ownership in the Promised Land. It's kind of poetic, right? Even though Abraham was promised the whole land of Canaan by God, the first piece he ever actually owns is the burial place for his wife. And that's pretty much it. It's a quieter chapter compared to the action-packed ones before it, but it's significant. Sarah's death marks the closing of a chapter in Abraham's life, and buying the land for her burial sets the stage for the future. That cave, Machpelah, is going to be the resting place for a lot of key figures later on too. It's like the family crypt. So yeah, Genesis chapter 23 is all about Abraham saying goodbye to Sarah, securing a burial place, and establishing a small foothold in the land of Canaan. It's somber, reflective, and kind of emotional if you think about everything they've been through together.